And thank you for joining me today. I'm Hawkeye, and this is Maple Leafs Man Advantage. And for today's video, I'm going to talk about the 1974 Expansion Draft. Now, this was for the two new teams in the NHL for this upcoming season, and they were the Kansas City Scouts and the Washington Capitals. So on June the 12th, 1974, that's when this expansion draft was held. This was around 2 weeks after the uh, amateur draft was held. So the first scouts and Capitals players were actually were gotten at that draft, if you will, like the very first players within their organizations. And the order of the two is now going to be the reverse of the way it was in the amateur draft. So the Capitals drafted first in that one. So in this, the expansion draft, it will be the Kansas City Scouts. Um, Thing is, these teams were both bad to the point could have they would be on a list of some of the worst expansion teams of all time. Nowadays in hockey, um, like for example, the Las Vegas Golden Knights, boy, they've always had a great team. They were able to, um, through some maneuvering of their GM and such, able to get some good players, high quality players, and put together quite a good team that could compete in the NHL. But back then, they were definitely, I'm not going to say picking off the garbage pile, but they were definitely getting, players that were certainly the lower end of things and guys that weren't protected on these teams that they could uh, pick up in this expansion draft. So, anyways, it was the Kansas City Scouts that went first, and with their very first selection, they selected goaltender Michel Plaze from the Montreal Canadiens. He was actually a number one pick for the Habs back in the 1968 amateur draft. I would have already talked about him in that particular video, but by this point in his career, he wasn't exactly carving out a career that would be equal to being a number one pick. So far, he'd played 33 games. He played for the Montreal Canadiens as well as the St. Louis Blues. He'd won 19 games, tied five, and had a 3.28 goals against average. Uh, but after this expansion draft, he would on to play 265 more games. He'd win 73 of them, tie 48, and grab a couple of shutouts. And he'd have 3.86 goals against average after this pickup here by the Scouts. So he would actually go on to win 24 games for the 1975-76 Pittsburgh Penguins as well. That was his career high. So other than the Scouts and the Pens, he also would go on to play for the Colorado Rockies and the Quebec Nordiques. So the Washington Capitals, with their very first selection, they picked somebody off the Toronto Maple Leafs. They picked up a goaltender as well, and that was Ron Lowe, who wasn't really playing in Toronto anymore. He was certainly in the minors, but he had played one season in Toronto back in 1972-73, and he played 42 games. He won 12 of them, grabbed four ties. He did have a shutout and had a 3.90 goals against average. Ron would go on to play 340 more games, where he won 90, tied 34. He had three shutouts and a 4.34 goals against average. Now, unfortunately for Ron, he would go on to backstop perhaps one of the worst teams in NHL history, and that was going to be coming up in this season, the 1974-75 Washington Capitals. Unfortunately, they were awful. Their record at the end of the season was 8 wins, 67 losses, and five ties. Oh boy, that was just plain brutal. After their playing there for a few years, um, Ron went on and played for the Detroit Red Wings, Quebec Nordique, Edmonton Oilers, and the New Jersey Devils. He was kind of a backup goalie most of the time in his career. But, you know, he did play on some pretty bad teams, though, as well, just starting there, right there in Washington. Um, so yeah, also taken from the Leafs roster was Denis Duperre, who was selected by the Washington Capitals with their 20th pick overall. Denny would go on to play 229 more games, score 51 goals with 55 assists for 106 points. He'd go on and score 23 goals this upcoming season for the Washington Capitals and the St. Louis Blues. He played for both of those squads. And he also ended up playing for the Kansas City Scouts and the Colorado Rockies as well. Um, Finally, Joe Lundgren was taken by the Washington Capitals. Just looking at my own team, I don't think he's on that. But he was taken by the Capitals with the 22nd pick. Joe had played 49 games in Toronto during the 1972-73 season. He had scored 2 goals with 8 assists for 10 points. He ended up just playing 3 games for the Caps this upcoming season and never played another NHL game after that. But wait, there are also players coming off of my own team here as well that I will mention that were taken in this draft. There would be, first off, left winger Bob Grip, who had played 1 game the previous season, but he would go on to play 73 games for the Washington Capitals, who had selected him with their 12th overall pick. He would score 11 goals and 13 assists for 24 points. He would be playing on my team, but I'm going to have to go back to my team after this one particular selection and see who I can put in his place. Um, Another guy that would be taken off my team would be Gary Croteau. He was selected by the Kansas City Scouts. Um, he had played for my team for a couple of seasons, was kind of like, a checking line winger. He was a left winger. Um, by this point, he had played 294 games. He'd scored 52 goals with 80 assists for 132 points. He would go on to play 6 seasons with the Scouts, and then they went to Colorado, became the Colorado Rockies, and he'd play another 390 games, scoring 92 goals, adding 96 assists for 188 points. He scored 20 goals in 2 different seasons and had a career high 24 in 1976-77 for the Rockies. So it's not a bad pickup for the Scouts, who are a pretty bad team. They need guys like this. That was a good pickup for them, and Gary could put the puck in the net there for them. So it was really bad. On the Leaf side of things, they picked up guys off their club that weren't even playing for them, other than Duperre. Um, I'm not exactly sure what his future was in Toronto at this point. Um, but they picked up a goalie that was probably their number 3 in Toronto, and as well myself. That's it. You picked up guys off my team that wouldn't be on my team, or would be getting very little time, or I'm going to be maybe trying to work out a trade to get them out of Toronto, like Gary Croteau. He's good, but the guys I got coming up behind him now, like I think they're good enough to put into the lineup ahead of him. So that's a pretty good expansion draft for Toronto so far. Um, Pretty good. So that's it. And as I said, I'll have to go over my own team. I'll do that in a couple of videos and see who is going to be on my particular team. Anyways, the next video I will do will be a trade that happened right before the season. But until next time, I hope you're enjoying watching playoff hockey. I know I'm pretty excited about it. But anyways, go Leafs go.